Welcome, everyone. It is week 7 from the stands, college football game day show. Joining me again, Andy Hopper, resident Illinois fan, and Tom Scavetta, resident Notre Dame fan. Andy showing that injured finger. Uh, what happened there, guy? We almost lost you for the game
I'm
day?
on I'm on IR this week,
IR.
boys. Well, actually, no, because I'm playing through it. So, yeah, I know what these young athletes are going through each week on the field, battling through injuries. I cut my finger on a shard of glass, kind of deep, bled for 3 or 4 hours. No big deal there, except for the fact that it is. But I'm here. Well, week 7, I think week 6. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think it was the best weekend of football we have had yet. Oh my God, I'm so excited to get into the review of last week, but it was I think my favorite week
Pretty
so
good
far of
there.
football.
Yeah, I agree. Tom, how's your week been?
It's been going good. Got to catch some college football last Saturday live in person. I got to see an NEC game, Sacred Heart University against Merrimack at Shoe's homecoming. That was a lot of fun getting to catch up with some of my old pals. And quite frankly, it was a very, very interesting week in college football. And I'm really excited to get into this week 6 recap because there is quite a bit to talk about.
And we will. We'll jump right into it. The weekly recap. Andy, we'll start with you. What caught your eye? What were your favorite games in this? What you're calling maybe best week of college football in a while?
So I'm gonna try to keep it quick, but there were just like the early games were terrific. The late game we got the upset. So obviously Oklahoma and Texas. Texas was back for like 3.5 quarters, and then Caleb Williams comes in and says, "No, no, no." Also, I want to point out it wasn't just Williams that played well. Kennedy Brooks, 2 late touchdowns, and he goes for 217 yards. The Texas defense just broke down at the end of this game. Bijan Robinson, he was electric. Everybody saw that run that Reggie Bush commented on Twitter, said, "I see you," said it made him stand up and clap. He goes for 137 and a touchdown. I didn't think Casey Thompson was bad in this game. He throws for 388 and 5 scores. I think really the defense just kind of let them down at the end of the game. Tragic for anybody that had Texas plus 3.5. Are you kidding me? What a way to lose that late touchdown run by Brooks. Also in the early window, Arkansas Ole Miss was insane. A 52-51 finish. Sam Pittman putting his nuts on the table, going for 2 at the end of regulation. They don't get it. The Lane train holds on. That's a big game there. What I also wanted to mention the game that probably nobody watched. I think like 95% of the country probably didn't watch this game. But UTSA is now 6-0. They beat Western Kentucky 52-46. Brian, I know you and I talked about this game a little bit, but this was insane.
It was.
Frank Harris throws for 349 and 6 touchdown. He also catches a 23-yard touchdown pass. They outlast Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky's quarterback Zappy was 38 for 60 for 523 and 5 touchdowns himself. I don't know how the Hilltoppers are 1-4. They are a lot better than that record. You also had I'm sorry, Sincere McCormick. Love this name. 23 carries for 123 yards. You had Josh Cephas, 8 catches for 83. You also had I don't know if I'm saying this right, Decorian Clark, he had a 43-yard touchdown. He finishes with 7 catches for 160 yards. They've got weapons on the outside. They've got a great running back. Frank Harris is an awesome quarterback. I'll get into the Roadrunners later. I know we're doing a segment about that, but that was a game that 99% of the country didn't watch, but they should have watched. It was absolutely electric. I think the live total went up to like 95 or something. I'm so mad I didn't bet the over when it originally opened. But shout out to the UTSA defense, actually. So Clarence Hicks picks off Zappy in the red zone with 3:21 remaining to end the comeback attempt for the Hilltoppers. But UTSA, man, they are a fun team to watch. If you get a chance to watch the Roadrunners this season, you definitely should. I recommend that. And then the last game I'll bring up, and I'll let Tom go. I'm sorry. you have to talk about Texas A&M. A former Nick Saban assistant has finally knocked off the old ball coach. Jimbo Fisher was the first one to do it. Nick Saban is now 24-1 against former assistants. These are the crazier stats here, boys. I don't know if so. Going into the game, Alabama was an 18.5-point favorites. They had won their last 50 games as double-digit favorites. They'd also won their last 100 games against unranked opponents. This is historic shit we saw on Saturday night in College Station. Shout out to Zach Calzada. The Cuban Missile is an absolutely electric nickname. Tom, you're shaking your finger at me because you were talking about him a few weeks ago. But it's just incredible that a guy that this fans were booing at certain points and talking shit about leads them to that insane drive and they win the game. And I don't know if you guys saw the video they caught of the kicker's family while like during the kick.
Yeah.
That was fucking awesome. Shout out to the Texas A&M Aggies. Awesome weekend of football. By the way, I predicted, boys, but Georgia #1 in the country.
There we go. A very nice wrap up there. And speaking of that video, one of the family members from that little section, I think it was like his mom, dad, and then there was like girlfriend, and then maybe like uncle or something, tweeted out that they were, I guess, had the TV camera lined up for them to like show them on the screen because it's obviously a historic kick, and see, they just never showed it on TV. They didn't show that kick, so no one got to saw it. But I watched. There was like a phone video of it. The girlfriend and the mom both like go down on their knees, start crying. Then the girlfriend realizes they're rushing the field, so she hops over that fence real quick. Like that was an awesome moment to watch. Yeah, I told you about those Roadrunners. You said you were gonna bet them. I said watch out because Zappy throws it a billion times.
We're gonna have and the money line, baby. Both of them hit for me. I told you. You said it was a rat line. I sniffed it out. It was not a rat line.
Those high-scoring games can get you sometimes. I just had to warn you. Had to warn you.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, I mean, you covered the bigger games of the week pretty well there. Obviously, Texas A&M. I told you, Jimbo's doing well with that program. It's kind of a shocker just because it is the first time that an assistant has gotten a win over Saban, but at the same time, not really that big of a surprise. That team is on the up and up, so shout out to them. Also, a game you didn't really touch on too much yet. I'll just do this one quickly. Iowa over Penn State was the other top matchup of that week. Penn State was looking to roll in that game. Sean Clifford gets hurt. Iowa comes back, classic Iowa fashion, very slowly, but methodically. They get the win, #2 in the nation now, behind those Georgia Bulldogs. OU over Texas, heartbreaking. Texas, come on, man. Bad loss there. Texas.
I got a question for you guys about the Iowa Penn State game.
Yep.
Excuse me. Are you guys pro or against their fans rushing the field as the higher ranked team and as favorites in the game?
You know what? They're #2 in the nation. Do whatever you want.
Pro.
I'm not going to say too much because my report card in an upcoming segment might have something to say about this. So,
okay.
Tom,
okay.
what's your take on it?
So, yeah, I agree. I think I'm pro rush, and that's it in that situation. That was one of my games actually. That Iowa defense held the Nittany Lions to just 3 points in the second half. They forced 4 turnovers. Clifford threw 2 picks, and then their backup Taquan Roberson also threw 2 picks, and they forced 10 Penn State penalties. That's a very hostile environment. Say what we want about Spencer Petras. He didn't need to be great this game because the defense was great. So they're moving up, and they have a very favorable schedule coming up. We talked about Jimbo Fisher just a couple minutes ago. He wanted Bama last year in the college football playoff. He didn't get it. He gets the win this time with a backup quarterback in Zach Calzada, which is absolutely insane. And what really sucks for Bama, A&M was already a 2-loss team. That does not bode well for Alabama when the first official college football playoff rankings come out. Now you have a 2-loss team on your resume, and you're probably going to draw Georgia in the SEC championship game. Can a 2-loss Bama team get into the college football playoff? I'm not so sure. And then we want to talk about Oklahoma How about Spencer Rattler getting benched for freshman Caleb Williams, who threw 2 touchdowns, not to mention had 88 yards on the ground and a 66-yard run. But Oklahoma, who was down 28-7, decides, all right, new game in the second half, outscores Texas 35-10. And then Brian, I know you were on that Razorbacks bandwagon early on in the season. They've crashed down to reality real quick. A couple losses. So those are the 4 games. The 4 games we just touched upon, and plus the road runners, of course, we cannot forget about them. But Iowa.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll save it. I remember what I was gonna say. I'll save it for the segment later. But yeah, I have inside information. So one of my really good buddies is an Iowa fan, and his relatives were at the game when Roberson checked in. I think they got 2 straight false start penalties. They said there's no way to describe how loud that place got. It was just like one of the craziest environments that they had ever been in. So, I mean, I'm not against the rush at all. I guess when I first saw it, I was a little confused, but it's like, go have fun. More so, just probably me being jealous that I don't get to do shit like that.
Yeah. Tom, any other games of the week for you? I know we kind of went long on you there.
No, that was it. You guys touched upon all the points. The big 4 for me were obviously Bama A&M, Iowa, Penn State, Sooners, Longhorns, and then Ole Miss and Arkansas. Those were my 4 games of the week.
All right.
Notre Dame against Virginia Tech. I mean, look, we'll save that for the next segment.
All right, fair enough. Well, then we will move into our next segment. That was week 6 that we just wrapped up, which means it is time again for mid-season report cards. We're going to rank a few teams, maybe, a few players, maybe, just a few things that need a grade here. So we'll start with Tom on this one. Let me bring up your report card here. There it is. Iowa, Spencer Rattler, and Brian Kelly. Start us off with your grades here.
So I'm giving Iowa an A. Their defense has not given up over 20 points per game. I don't know if we're scaling an A plus or not here for anybody, but for me, it's an A just because their offense has not been like lights out, but their defense has been. And their path to the Big Ten championship game looks very clean right now. They're likely going to need to win that game to make the college football playoff. I'm not sure if a 1-loss Iowa team can make it, but with the way this season is going, the Hawkeyes look really damn good. And that defense, the 4 turnovers they caused on Penn State on Saturday, has me really high on this Iowa team, as I have been for several weeks now. Andy can account for that. I have been very pro Hawkeyes this season. Kirk Ferentz has been there forever, and he's doing an outstanding job. That's my grade for Iowa. My next one, Spencer Rattler, I'm giving him a C minus. This is a guy who came into the season prized, highly coveted as a potential top 5 pick and the Heisman Trophy favorite. He has now lost his starting job to a freshman 6 weeks into the season. Lincoln Riley has handled this situation perfectly, putting the team first to stay undefeated. Rattler's numbers, look, they weren't awful. They really weren't, but there's nothing really special that stood out to me about this quarterback. I just think they needed a spark in that game, and they went with the freshman Williams. And, quite frankly, who knows? Maybe Rattler's time at Oklahoma is done. Could this hurt his NFL draft future? 100%. But he's not an F caliber player. I'm giving him a C minus because I'm not totally down on him for good, but I'm extremely disappointed with him and his play. And then the last one I'm going to go over is Brian Kelly, right? Brian Kelly gets an A minus, and here's why. This is a very young Notre Dame team who, let's be real, guys, they should probably have multiple losses right now, right? You beat Toledo and Florida State by 3. You beat Virginia Tech by 3 on the road, and the quarterback situation has been an ongoing circus since week 2. But they sit at 5-1 heading into the bye. Yes, there's been issues at quarterback, but Jack Cohn has been getting beat up behind an underwhelming offensive line. This is the worst offensive line Brian Kelly has had since being head coach at Notre Dame. Kelly is helping his team win these close games on the road in particular. They beat FSU on the road. They beat Virginia Tech on the road. And obviously, they won by a sizable margin at Wisconsin. They are still in the discussion if they convincingly run the table for the college football playoff with how well Cincinnati is playing. That helps Notre Dame just a little bit. If they convincingly run the table and teams continue to beat each other up, there is a chance. Not a big chance, but there is somewhat of a small chance for them to sneak in. This defense also has drastically improved since week one at Florida State. And we know Kelly is more of an offensive minded coach, but he said some things this season that the media is deemed as questionable, but yet again, this team is still on a path to potentially only lose one game with a relatively young squad, and you have to give that man all the credit in the world with what he's done for the Fighting Irish over this past decade.
Yeah, just quickly before we move on from yours, the funniest thing about the Spencer Rattler thing to me, we talked about, the NIL stuff towards the beginning of the year and, whether that was going to ruin college football and all that stuff. And my take on it at the time was that these companies will eventually figure out that these $1 million contracts are wasted money. This is a perfect example, and it's come so early. We were in week 6, and the highest paid current player with NIL deals, Spencer Rattler, is now on the bench and probably going to stay there for the remainder of the season, based on how that Texas game ended up. That company is just throwing money at him, and now it's what they have a player who's going to ride the bench. So go ahead, Andy.
I feel like it's just we're just waiting for him to enter the transfer portal and end up at like Arizona or Texas Tech or like Baylor or somewhere, like try to stay at a somewhat big name program, because he can't go to like some like FCS school or something. I guess he could, but like he's a douchebag. Like I don't like him at all. Like he's just, if you've seen any videos or done any research on the guy, the way he conducts himself, it's just doesn't seem right. I think it's just inevitable that he gets transferred away. Tom, I think your grades were very on point. Iowa's defense seems to be like always good for a pick six. Like no matter what, they're gonna get one. And then Rattler C-. I think that, because it's not like he was terrible, but yeah, you're right. There was no spark. They're down 3 scores to Texas. How can you come here, like if you're Lincoln Riley this next week? How can you stand in front of your team and be like, all right, we're back to Rattler? Like I think it's time for Caleb Williams, and of course he's just going to step in and be absolutely fucking electric. And Oklahoma might get that F word title away from them. Frauds. But yeah, Tom, I like the card.
Thank you.
Real quickly, I'll touch on this. Pretty much, I feel like for Rattler, the one thing that has sort of saved him in our eyes, like I think every time we've talked about him, we're like, oh, that completion percentage. It's still really high, but he's just been like, so it seems like it's still so unproductive for this Oklahoma team. Yeah, it's like he's so focused. I mean, he probably is not, but just the way it seems based on that stat line, it seems like he's focused on only getting like completions, even if that's dumping it down short for like little 3-yard gains instead of going deep. I don't know if that's a Lincoln Riley call thing going on, but that was the only like pro that he had going on, and it hasn't helped them at all. So I don't know, just really really odd stuff from Rattler. So I agree. The C- is very appropriate there. We'll move on next to Andy's report card. Let me bring that up here. There it is. Georgia defense, UTSA, the Roadrunners, and Coach O, LSU. Andy, let's hear your grades.
All right, so start with the Georgia defense. This is something I've been saying every week on the show. They have the best defense in the country. They're absolutely insane. A+, similar to Iowa's defense, like Tom's grade. I did scale it to an A+ because I think they're that good. Through 6 games, they've only allowed 33 points. That's insane. They're only allowing 3.5 yards per play on 339 total plays. Just the longevity, what they've been able to do. They've given up 2 offensive touchdowns in 6 games. The first one was in garbage time versus South Carolina, which I apologize. I'm pretty sure there were a bunch of backups, like the twos were on the field. The first team offense was not out there. They did give up 1 against Auburn on that Tank Bigsby 6-yard touchdown, but that was their only touchdown of the game, and Georgia ends up winning 34-10. They're the number 1 defense statistically in the NCAA. They're only allowing 201 yards per game. The 64 yards on the ground is all they're allowing their opponents. They've just been an absolute brick wall, and I think it's them and Bama in the SEC, and I think it's Georgia for the national championship. This is their best chance to win a championship that they've had in the past, 3, 4, we could say 5 years. And there have been some very, very good Georgia teams that they've thrown out there. So that is my first one. Georgia defense, A+. They are just incredible. UTSA, this one, I love the fucking Roadrunners, guys. They're 6-0. This 6-game win streak is a school record, longest in school history. Second-year head coach Jeff Traylor is just doing phenomenal. It's only his second year in the program. He's got them going in the right direction. He's a former Texas high school coach. He spent time at major college programs like Texas, Arkansas, SMU. When he was in high school, when he was a high school coach, he won 87% of his high school games. He takes a lot of pride in being from Texas, having a lot of former Texas high school coaches on his staff, and having Texas kids on his roster. And they are just showing out. And it's absolutely ridiculous that they are not ranked yet. They're 6-0. They are the best team in Conference USA. I know when you think of Conference USA, you don't think powerhouse, but give them some credit. Frank Harris has been so fun to watch. He's very solid at senior quarterback. He's leading this offense to average 450 yards per game and 37 points a game. I mentioned Sincere McCormick earlier. He's been a force in the backfield. Joshua Cephas, DeCorian Clark have been big play threats on the outside. And I also want to point out their biggest 3 wins, arguably, have all been on the road. At Illinois, that's a Big Ten win. At Memphis, who they've been a solid program in the American for a long time. And then this last weekend at Western Kentucky. I know Western Kentucky, that 1-4 record, but I mean, 2 of those losses are to Big Ten opponents. And I mean, you heard it. Fucking Zappy threw for 500 yards. So shout out to the Roadrunners. Rank them in the top 25, you cowards. I'm calling for it now. They are awesome. I hope to see them go undefeated. I think that'd be awesome. So my last one, this one, much like Tom, I'm just disappointed. Coach O and LSU, an F. I think it warrants an F, guys. We are 2 years out, 2 years removed from a national title, and all hope seems lost in Baton Rouge around this program. It's gotten that bad. Subpar finish, 5-5 last year. Obviously, the opt-outs, the COVID year. And could it get even worse this year? Just feels like everyone's getting hurt. Every day you see another report that someone is out for the year, opting out. Boutte is now out. The multiple corners with Stingley Jr., Elias Ricks are gone. They have no physicality or desire to just play hard, it seems, especially in the trenches. They can't run the ball. It's been terrible. They're averaging 83.2 yards per game on the ground, 2.9 yards per carry as a team. Their leading rusher is Davis Price with 287 yards and only 2 touchdowns on the year. That's through 6 games. That's not an SEC caliber run game. And even on the defensive side of the ball as well, they're stacking the box and they're still giving up first down runs. In their last game against Kentucky, they gave up 8.9 yards per carry. It just hasn't been sustainable. All the air seems to just be, out of this balloon that is the LSU Tigers program. I think Coach O kind of seems disinterested, and the team seems to be disinterested as well. I think he might have lost the locker room, but So they're 3-3, starting with number 20 Florida on Saturday. They play 4 straight ranked opponents. Coach O's seat is currently the hottest in the country, and if things don't start looking up fast, he's out, which sucks to say, and it might already be too late.
Hottest in the country. That's a pretty bold call.
Yeah, I don't know who else is. Maybe Urban Meyer in the NFL, but this is a college football show.
That's true. That's probably a pretty hot one as well. I would say. Yeah, I like all the grades here. I know you've jumped on the Roadrunners bandwagon pretty hard. I haven't watched enough of them to, give a solid A plus, but I'll trust you there. I do think this is at least an A year for them. And then yeah, Coach O LSU, not good things there. Obviously the injuries aren't going to help, but it's just weird how quick that downfall was. Everyone kind of warned us. They said, those coordinators were a big part of that successful LSU championship team. Seems like they were right, I guess, because it seems to be going that way. They've all left. Coach O, not being able to replicate that success yet, and he might be gone before he gets the chance to. Tom, any thoughts on Andy's report card there?
I agree with everything. I mean, maybe not an F for Coach O. Maybe more, if we're being generous, maybe more like in the D range. I mean, I don't know. Again, I haven't watched LSU very religiously this season. The only team I do that with is Notre Dame, and then I'll watch the game of the week. But yeah, Coach O has a big issue on his hands right now, and he has not looked good coaching wise this season. But LSU is going through a gauntlet right now. I mean, they just lost to Kentucky, and now, I mean, this week they have another tough battle coming up. So, yeah, I agree with everything Andy said. That UTSA, I'm going to tell you something. I mean, I haven't done much research on them, but from what I've seen, from what I've looked up, they look damn good, and they're going to be pushing these, committee people to put them in the top 25 sooner than later.
All right, we'll wrap up Andy's report card then. Move on to the last one, which is my report card here. Didn't send it to you guys in our group chat, but I have Iowa State, the ACC, and fans. We're going to start with Iowa State here. Beginning of the season. I keep bringing this up. Call them for the Big 12 winner. That's not looking too great there. Not even good, actually. They've already got they've already got 2 losses, so I'm going to give them a D. Obviously, the Iowa loss, forgivable. It's the number 2 team in the nation now. The fact that they beat Penn State and did move up to 2 instead of, that loss probably would have brought them down to maybe like number 10, the way things were going with Clifford. That would have looked worse for the Cyclones, but Iowa did get the win. So, quality loss, I guess, as the committee likes to say there. The loss to Baylor, though, not as good. And, I mean, the schedule coming up at Kansas State versus number 12 Oklahoma State, and then at West Virginia versus Texas, and then Oklahoma, who now, is probably going to have their quarterback situation sorted out by then, with Rattler probably riding the bench. It's a tough road, and they could easily they could win all those games, but they could just as easily lose 2 or 3 more of those. And this is, like I said, the best core that this team has had in a while. Breece Hall, fantastic running back. I know Tom loves him. Not doing too much to help them. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is just probably more of a disappointment thing for their fans. They probably saw all these pieces falling together perfectly. Thought this was their season. It's not. So disappointing for them more than anything, but disappointing for me as well, because I thought they could shake up the Big 12 this year, but that's not going to happen. It looks like. Second up, I have the ACC, giving them a C minus. Their golden child, Clemson, 2 losses already. And what else do they have to show for it? Not much. The only remaining undefeated team in the conference is the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Never thought I'd say that. Very weird to see. They're sitting at number 16, 6-0. They could win the conference and not even be ranked in the top 6 at this point, just because of how low that ranking is right now. I mean, I'm just being honest. You guys already know my thoughts on preseason rankings, hurting teams. That could be the case here for Wake Forest. It's gonna be they're gonna need a lot of teams to lose if they can pull off an undefeated season, which I think is probably not all too likely. Clemson probably they've got only the one loss, so they could still technically, get to the ACC championship game. But I don't know where they go from there. I don't think the committee is going to throw them in with 2 losses, and not really great losses either. So, yeah, it's just been an absolute clusterfuck for them. Wake Forest ranked, NC State ranked at 22. I mean, Tom, I'll get your thoughts quick here. Probably one of the other better teams up here, Virginia Tech. I know you got to watch them this past week against Notre Dame. I mean, did they look like a threat at all, or?
No, it was just Notre Dame with the quarterback issues. That's why they were in the game, and obviously the home crowd. Braxton Burmeister didn't look good. I think your ACC grade would be a little bit higher than that if Notre Dame was in the conference again this year. No little bias there, bringing that up, but I mean, look, it's a fair grade. Virginia Tech, they beat somebody really good early on in the season, and then they've lost. They've fallen off. And they have another challenging matchup this weekend. I think they're going up against Pittsburgh. They're going up against a Heisman candidate. So the ACC is looking like an absolute mess. That's the nice way of putting it. I don't think they're really going to do much. I mean, that Wake Forest NC State matchup in a few weeks looks enticing, but if this is what we're talking about as being good in the ACC, that's a big problem. They're not getting a team this year. There's no way. They have little to zero shot of getting a team in the college football playoff. And it's a real shame. It is a real shame because last year you had Notre Dame and you had Clemson.
Yeah, it's, very enticing if, Notre Dame does want to go to that conference, and we've talked about that last year.
We're trying.
Yeah, that would make things a lot more interesting. Because, Clemson, just everyone's, on their back. They've been carrying the conference for so long, which is why I can only give a C- here, because Clemson is already out of the conversation here for the college football playoff. Yeah, I think that big win you're talking about, I just looked it up. It was 17-10 week 1 against UNC, who has also fallen off. So even that win, not as great for them as once thought. And my final grade here, the fans are back after a season of not being allowed in the stands. I'm going to give them an A+++. I fucking love it. I've seen so much energy in the stands. Listen, the fans are such a big part of college football. It was so weird to watch it without them. They're back. They're electric. Some of my favorites so far, obviously Tom didn't like my thoughts on the Cincy fans at Notre Dame, but they showed up. They showed up. That was the biggest game in Cincinnati's football history, and they had a sizable crowd there. Some other favorites. We had a double field rush. Some fans didn't get a response back, so I'm not going to risk it. A fan posted a TikTok. He did a double field rush. He was at the Red River Showdown at noon as a fan of Oklahoma, got to see the comeback, rushed the field, drove 3 hours to the Texas A&M Alabama game, which at the time, I didn't realize those games were so close. That was a night game. Threw on the Texas A&M. I think one of his brothers went there or something. Threw on the Texas A&M gear. They beat Alabama. Rushes the field again. I'm sure that was an incredible experience. Like you said earlier, Andy, the family of the kicker, electric moment for them. They all rushed. Well, the girlfriend, at least, we got to see her. She hopped that
wall.
Yeah, she hopped that thing real quick. And then, yeah, like you said, Iowa rushing the field. I think we're all for it.
One more field rush that you haven't hit yet.
Oh, go for it.
From the Cum-Ass Bowl, the UConn versus UMass.
That was my last one here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Just gorgeous.
You read my mind. Yeah. UMass fans rushing the field against UConn. Some would say, what the hell are you doing, UConn? 0-7. Do you really need to rush the field against an 0-7 team when you get the win? Yes.
Yeah.
Why the hell not? That was our first win
Math.
since September 28th, 2019. Go Minutemen. Rush that field as much as you want. But yeah, the fans, it's been an awesome thing to see them back in the stands, see them show out. Any thoughts on those grades? We kind of touched on the ACC, but Iowa State or fans?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Fans are back.
Fans are back. There we go. We'll move then into our next segment, if I can get it up here. Actually, you know what? We're going to throw it to our man Tom here. May have something to say because he got a little bit of merch. Tom, what's this merch situation you got going on here?
So our network that I run outside of this podcast called Review and Preview Sports launched our merch on Bonfire on Monday, October 11th. So please feel free to go check out some of our merch, support our podcast company. We have a lot of good stuff: sweatshirts, t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, coffee mugs. We have the whole 9 yards, and we really do appreciate everyone that supported us so far on Bonfire. So make sure to go check that stuff out. It's a 2-week campaign right now, but we're probably going to prolong that. I know Andy's done it in the past, and I'm really excited to get this merch out. And yeah, Review and Preview Sports. I mean, you could check out all of our shows weekly, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have stuff flowing throughout the whole course of the week. And, you know, once we get our merch, we're going to start wearing it. And we love our fans. We love the support you guys give us. Brian and Andy have been huge supporters of our network over the last year. So, yeah, guys, go check out some merch. Bonfire, Review and Preview. It's really good stuff. So make sure to go check that stuff out.
There you
Can
go.
I get a special like 5-timers jacket or shirt or something for appearing on all the review and preview shows?
a review and preview Letterman.
Yeah,
Have
a
you
Letterman
appeared
jacket
on
or maybe a plaque.
Yeah, you have to appear on our wrestling show now. Four
Oh, there you
quarters.
Oh fuck. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you know wrestling.
I know
but,
nothing. I had like very, very little. I've got some buddies, some good buddies that I game with are into wrestling.
well,
Actually did go to the AEW show in Chicago because I got a free ticket to it, which was pretty cool. Saw CM Punk's first match back, and I like the indie wrestling shit where they beat the shit out of each other with like glass and like light tubes and throw each other through shit. That's the fun shit. But yeah, love it. Buy the merch.
There you go. Buy all the merch. We'll throw the link down in the description, along with our links and Andy's links as well. Be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, buy up all the merch. Christmas is coming. Holidays are coming. Black Friday's coming. You need something to buy that merch. And we'll move in now to our next segment. Not a very interesting name. First loss. Still quite a few undefeated teams here in the top 25. We're going to go over just a few of them and make a guess as to who their first loss will be against, or if they won't lose at all. Starting off, the lowest ranked so far of this grouping, we're going to start off with Wake Forest. Wake Forest, obviously, in the ACC, which I just torched a little bit, but they are undefeated. They are ranked. Andy, who is the first loss for Wake Forest?
This is tough. Like you mentioned how the ACC is having a down year. They like it or not, they do always seem to have some tough in-conference games. So if you look at the rest of Wake Forest's schedule, they're off this week. They have Army next week. They host Duke. They have to go to Army. Ooh, that's interesting. They host Duke. They have to go to North Carolina. I know North Carolina has been bad this year, but I mean that seems like a game that could get scary. They host 22 NC State. We know they knocked off Clemson. They have to go to Clemson. So if they are going to lose, I can see this team finishing 11-1. If they are going to lose, I'm going to say they lose to NC State on November 13th.
Okay, that's a home game, so home loss there. I'm going with probably what most, at least at the beginning of the season, would have expected. Clemson. Um, I mean, listen, I just talked a bunch of shit about Clemson, but they still carry the rest of the conference on their back. It's still a decent team. It's not like they're absolutely terrible. They're just it's just not their year.
Right.
And that's a road game. That's a tough place to play in there, Death Valley. Listen, the Wake Forest team is doing pretty good, but that's always a tough matchup. There, DJ, not pulling out the stops that they wanted there. As a quarterback, I'm not even going to attempt his last name on the show today. I've butchered it about 5 times already. Um, but yeah, that I also, the Army game on the road. Army is a weird team always. Um, I don't know. I think I think they'll take that one. I almost wanted to change there. I'm looking at it. Um,
Oh.
if it was later in the season, if we had a little cold boys game, 5 degrees in the cold, triple option, I might give it to Army there, but I think I'm gonna stick with Clemson as the first loss. Tom.
Tom, our guy Gabe Flayton's going to get up for that one.
Oh, absolutely. Big Army guy. Big Army guy. Yeah, first loss. I'm going with Andy here. I'm going NC State. I don't think they're going to beat them. I think again they haven't. They've been competitive. Wake Forest. They've won a lot of games that they should, but I think they're going to end up being a 2-loss team. Actually, I do think they lose to Clemson on the road as well. But as far as a first loss goes, I think NC State is the team that they lose to. I understand they're at home, but NC State is also ranked. They've been coming on as of late. And that's a game I'm really excited to watch. You mentioned the ACC has been fraudulent all season long, and what better way to prove that very mediocrity than Wake Forest losing 2 games late in the season, Brian? So
There you go. Moving on to our next one, we have Michigan State. Sparty, currently undefeated, as well as their rival Michigan, ranked slightly higher here than Wake Forest. Tom, we'll start with you on this one. Who is Michigan State's first loss, or do they go undefeated?
So Michigan, they're going to beat Indiana. They're going to beat Michigan. They're going to beat Purdue, and they're going to beat Maryland. But they're not going to beat Ohio State. Ohio State is their second to last game. I view that as their first loss. I just don't really see them being able to take on Ohio State. I mean, it'll be a competitive football game, but Michigan, they've had a couple. They've had a couple of very close victories this season. I mean, Rutgers took the. I mean, they haven't looked all that great, and you guys know my stance on Jim Harbaugh, right? So I'm obviously going to pick the Spartans in that game, but I mean, Ohio State. I think late in the season they're going to be finding their footing. I don't think they're going to want to lose another game. So that's my first loss for MSU.
Yeah, you kind of put it perfectly there with the, finding their feet with Ohio State. That's who I'm going with as well. They're a little sketchy in the beginning of the season, but that's obviously the biggest game of the season for Michigan State right now. That game, it's on the road, I believe, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think the Buckeyes have found their footing, and I still don't know if I see them in the playoffs, but I don't think this Michigan State team is going to be able to get past them here. Peyton Thorne's been all right at QB, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Love that ratio. Big ratio guy. Kenneth Walker has been pretty effective. But yeah, I think Stroud and Ohio State have done enough to get back on track here, to where they take down the Spartans at home in the shoe. So unfortunately, Michigan State not going undefeated for me. Andy, first loss for Michigan State.
I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go against you guys, and I think Michigan marches into East Lansing and beats Michigan State.
Ooh.
On October 30th. A very spooky loss for the Spartans. Getting ready for Halloween. So if you look at your schedule, so they have Indiana. They're at Indiana this week. Then they have a bye. I was kind of tempted to almost take Indiana because just as maybe this is a look ahead game. For Michigan State, what they don't really care. They're just looking forward to Michigan, but they've got a bye coming up before the Michigan game, so I am going to take the Spartans. I'm not going to be surprised if they beat Michigan. I just like what the Wolverines have going this year, and I want to be a little different from the fellas this time. So, I think one of two things happens. I think they either lose to Michigan. They beat Purdue, beat Maryland, and they lose to Ohio State, lose Penn State. I think best case scenario for Michigan State this season is 10-2.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's just really tough tail end of that schedule for them.
Mm-hmm.
Then moving on to our next one, we have Oklahoma pulled off the comeback this week in the Red River Showdown. Andy, we'll start with you on this one. The Sooners, are they finally going to get beaten? Can they keep getting away with this, with these sketchy-ass wins? Will they go undefeated, or who is their first loss?
So if you look at their schedule, so this weekend they have TCU. TCU hasn't looked terrible, but I mean they're an unranked team. They're going to Norman. They have to go to Lawrence to play the Jayhawks next week. Watch out for that one. They host Texas Tech. They got to go to Baylor, who Baylor's looked pretty good this year. Brian's Iowa State Cyclones march into Norman, Oklahoma on November 20th. I think their first loss, I think they're going to fucking string us along all year. They're going to lose in Bedlam. They're going to lose to Oklahoma State last game of the year, November 27th.
All right, Tom.
Unfortunately, I agree with Andy. I think Baylor will be another challenging game for them. I will not be shocked if Baylor pulls off the upset there. Just keep that on record in a few weeks from now. I think Baylor is very prone to upsetting.
I got that in my personal notes.
Them in that game, but I think that would have been more likely to happen if Spencer Rattler was the quarterback. Now that he's not, I think Oklahoma State is probably the team that upsets them. Again, it's an interstate rival. It's going to be a hostile environment. Oklahoma is on the road in that game, and it is the last game of the season. So if they are a one-loss team, I mean, they probably still get into the Big 12 championship game, but it's really going to affect their college football playoff status because right now Oklahoma is viewed as a team that probably has to be undefeated to get in because of their margin of victories this year has been extremely close, guys.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been that. And we've seen what the committee's been doing. They've been moving teams down that are even undefeated, that aren't winning by sizable margins. They're taking that more into consideration this year than in years past. So I think Oklahoma is in trouble if they do lose that last game of the season. And unfortunately, I think they will.
Yeah, so very similar, but different. I'll start off by saying I had a big one planned. I was going to call TCU over Oklahoma before the
Honestly, when I looked at it the first time, I was like, I think they can. I don't disagree with you there, Brian.
Yeah, but that was pre-Red River Showdown. They now have who I think is the better quarterback and the better situation in Caleb Williams. So despite the fact that, he just came in for, half a game last week and doesn't have many reps in, game scenarios, I think they do take care of him there. I do think also they lose to Oklahoma State, but not in Bedlam. I think they lose in the conference championship game. They're going to get a big win on the road against the Cowboys, and then I think they fuck it up in the conference championship game. I think regardless of how the rest of the season goes, to me, I do hate that they do keep getting away with it. I don't want them to keep getting away with it. But I've just, the story just over and over again, just watching these games, it's so stressful for me as I'll watch them as a neutral. I don't hate them. But they somehow keep doing it. And I just think it's going to keep happening. It just seems like one of those years. And now they've got the better quarterback in. So maybe, these slim margins of, 3-4 point victories, stretch out to, 7-10 point victories. But I do think they're still going to mess it up. And that will be in the conference championship game, which, might make it a little bit worse for them. I don't know. Do you guys think they slide into the playoff what, 11, 12-1 at that point, if that's their only loss. It'd be a weird situation, actually, because assuming Oklahoma State is who they play in the conference championship game, they could have, 1v1 win against each other, but Oklahoma State would have the conference championship win, and Oklahoma would have. So I guess the answer is no, because Oklahoma would only have
So
the regular season win.
that's the only way they get in. I think if it's reversed, if Oklahoma State wins the last game and Oklahoma wins the conference championship game, because it pretty much offsets that previous loss. So you could look at it saying, oh, well, they beat the team that they just lost to. So how the hell are we going to keep them out? Especially if Oklahoma State is a top 10 team by that point, right? Because if they beat Oklahoma, they will be a top 10 team heading into that game. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. This is a conversation the three of us are probably going to have again in a month from now when
Yeah.
things are getting very, very intense. So I'm really looking forward to having that discussion.
All right, yeah.
Bri-
I almost wanted to get into it a little bit more, but yeah, you're right. We'll probably save that one.
Well,
Go ahead.
it's like what you were saying about Bama earlier. It's like, how could you possibly put a 2-loss Bama in there? It's like the fucking playoff committee will find a way. They'll play Georgia really close, and it'll come down to the wire, and Georgia will win. And they're like, you know what? Crimson Tide, you're in.
Yeah, we'll get a the eye test. The eye test is what they like to say.
Yeah. They passed the eye test.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, and then lastly here we have current number 1 in the nation, Georgia Bulldogs. Big team, big defense. Alabama has fallen off, and Georgia now looks like the runaway favorite here. Andy, we'll start with you again on this one. Did we see a first loss from Georgia, or did the Bulldogs go undefeated?
I'm betting on them going undefeated, and here's why. So if they won't have to face Alabama until the SEC championship game. That's assuming neither of these teams stumble, of course, but assuming Alabama doesn't lose another game, which I don't think they will. But if you look at Georgia's schedule, the toughest game they really have left is this weekend against Kentucky, a team that's surging right now, number 11 in the country, but it is at home between the hedges. Follow that up with, going to the Swamp to face Florida. That's going to be another tough game. We know how much problems Florida gave Alabama earlier this year. They host Missouri. That's a wash. Tennessee's not looking too bad. They have to go to Rocky Top to play Tennessee on November 13th. They host Charleston Southern, that classic second to last weekend cupcake game for the SEC. And then they have their rivalry with Georgia Tech on November 27th. I don't see a loss here. If I'm doing my eye test, Brian, I don't see a loss here. Potentially to Bama in the SEC championship game. I don't know. I think Georgia's the best team in the country right now. And I think they proved that this past weekend. I'm going to say they go undefeated.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Swamp is always a tough place to play, but Florida had a bad loss a week or two ago, right? So now they're a 2-loss team all of a sudden, and they've kind of fallen off the roadmap. So
Let me quickly interrupt you guys. I was looking at the schedule. This, to me, it still looks like that game is at the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville. Has that been
Okay.
changed?
Yeah,
So
you're right.
that's no, you are right. Actually, that's closer to Georgia than it is Florida.
Yeah.
My fault.
I just wanted to make sure because I didn't know if there's like some weird COVID rule and they changed it.
No,
I
because
totally forgot they play that in Jacksonville. I apologize.
yeah, I thought it was at Jacksonville too, but I don't know. I guess Andy and I both had a little snafu right there. But anyway, they will be in Jacksonville. Actually, that would be a great game to go to.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not losing that game, and if they lose, it'll be to Bama in the SEC championship game. But I am not predicting that at this time. I am predicting Georgia to go undefeated, and they will be the reason why Bama does not make the college football playoff this season, if that does in fact happen. So I'm predicting Georgia to lose no football games.
All right. Wow. 2 undefeateds. Do I go with the grain? No. solely because it would just be such a Georgia thing to go undefeated into the SEC championship game and lose to Alabama. Um, I think that's exactly what is going to happen here. The tail end of their schedule is very weak, which I think actually helps them a lot. Um, I mean, I don't want to write off some of these teams as being like awful, but for how easy the end of their schedule is compared to how it was in the beginning, they're going to get some cupcakes and a lot of rest here before they go into what presumably will be Alabama in that SEC championship game. Um, it's actually a little bit of a risk here for me to take this because Alabama might not even come out of the West.
Yeah.
I think they will. I think they will. But yeah, I don't know. Calling the SEC championship game in general, for all we know, someone else comes out of there like a who would we? It can't be Ole Miss now, right? Because of the heads up. Had to be.
Could be Kentucky, right? Or no,
No,
are they in
Kentucky's in.
Georgia?
Yeah, Kentucky's in the East. I think. Okay, yeah, it's got to be Alabama. The next best up is Auburn. So I think we will see that game, and I think I don't know.
Arkansas? Are they not in the?
They are, but they have the 2 conference losses already.
Oh, you're right. You're
So
right. You're right.
yeah, I think we do see Bama, and it would just be. Listen, I would love to see Georgia win that game, but I think just based on history, things have not gone the Bulldogs' way of late these past couple decades. And
You don't say.
yeah, I think it might happen again. So I'm going to call Georgia's first loss the SEC championship game, and that'll be that. As we move into our shots and chasers, I do not have this week's records. Get back to that next week. Who do we have? First up, in the noon slot, Texas just took that embarrassing comeback loss from Oklahoma, taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, currently ranked number 12. This game is on Fox. Tom, who do you have winning this game?
Oh, you're starting with me. And I really don't want to do this either because I just hyped up Oklahoma State to be this, insane team that's going to knock off Oklahoma. But Casey Thompson just torched that Oklahoma defense. And Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy are lethal weapons. And Texas's 2 losses are to Arkansas and Oklahoma. Steve Sarkisian, he's moved his team in the right direction. They figured out their quarterback problem. And the Cowboys are coming off 2 wins against ranked teams in themselves in Kansas State and Baylor, who were previously ranked. However, I do not love their quarterback. Spencer Sanders had 3 interceptions. I think their offense leans on the running game a little bit too much. And the fact that this is at Texas, I'm going to pick Texas to win this football game on Saturday. So I'm going Longhorns. And they are favored by 5.
Yep. Andy?
Yeah, this is interesting because last week Texas not back like we said, but they did look really good for 3 quarters of that game, and they have lost to 2 really good football teams. Oklahoma State is just quietly undefeated over there in Stillwater, just doing the little things right, but it's kind of the opposite of what we're used to seeing from the Cowboys, right? That explosive offense, really, they're getting it done on the defensive side of the ball this year. The defensive line has just been incredible for OSU so far this year. They're ranked number 12 in the country. Texas does really need a bounce back after the highs and lows of that game. Casey Thompson, he threw for 5 touchdown passes, 388 yards. I don't know. This one's really tough for me. I'm trying to talk myself in because I'm kind of surprised Tom picked Texas. So that
Throw you
kind
off?
of surprised. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm taking Texas. I'm the Longhorns.
Locking in Texas.
God damn it.
Andy hates that.
Not that I agree with Tom. You just shocked me, but not that I hate to agree with Tom, but it's just like no, you're right. I just talked up Oklahoma State and how they're going to beat Oklahoma. I don't know. This just feels like a big bounce back spot for Texas to prove like, hey, we're actually, a pretty good pretty good football team.
Right.
Yeah,
and it is a road game for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same, kind of way I looked at this game. Texas, like you said, was good for 3 quarters. And the reason they lost that game, I mean, they lost that game for a few reasons, but, Oklahoma had the advantage of putting in a QB who, I think is, all around as a player better than Rattler, but also in a QB that they didn't really have, time or any tape on to prep for. Obviously you would take, if someone offered you the lead or, not being able to prep for a QB change, you would take the lead every single time. But it's still always difficult in that situation when a guy who you've never seen play comes in and starts doing things that, you've got no tape on, you haven't prepped for. So, yeah, Oklahoma State ranked higher, but Texas, this team, now that they have Casey Thompson at the helm, Bijan Robinson, been healthy all season. He's still producing game after game. I just love all the pieces that Texas team has. Obviously, it's a bad loss to allow your rival to come back and win a game like that. But yeah, I think this is a very clear bounce back game for them. And I think not only do they win, I think they cover the spread at, -5. So I'm also take the Longhorns here. Moving into the Chaser for noon, little AAC action as we have the Bearcats, the highest ranked G5 team in the country, sitting at number 3, taking on my UCF Knights, who are struggling a little bit. Andy, seems like a pretty obvious sweep here, even for me, but who do you think is winning this game?
The Bearcats are gonna kick your ass, Brian. I'm really sorry to say it to you, but I mean, come on. We know how awesome Desmond Ridder has been. I can't get enough of Jerome Ford in the backfield, as well. And their defense, they just suffocate you. They're only, I think they're what I say a couple weeks ago, like 3.5 yards per carry. It is going to be an uphill battle for UCF. Isn't Dylan Gabriel hurt too?
Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a long day. But I think Cincinnati takes this, and I think it's going to be pretty easy for them.
I agree. I'm wearing a UCF shirt right now, but underneath it, just kidding. I'm not going to pull off a switcheroo here. As we were talking, that would have been such a heel move, WWE, since we were talking about wrestling earlier, to just rip that off, pull out a Bearcats, but I think that's illegal, probably in most states. Yeah, man, I really wish I could say I want UCF to even win this game, but I honestly don't. I really want the G5. I know we're leaving it, but to get a little bit of respect here in the rankings, by way of 2 top 5 teams one of them knocking the other off last week in the Iowa-Penn State game, Cincinnati now sits at number 3. Alabama lost, so they moved up. I said they were going to be number 4, regardless of what happened 2 weeks ago. Now they've gotten that extra spot. It's a little bit of a cushion there. So 2 teams have to pass them to knock them out. I don't think that happens. I think Cincinnati absolutely rolls here. Sorry, Mikey Keene, who is the QB who has stepped in for Dylan Gabriel, but you're not that guy, at least not this season. 21-point spread, so nobody likes us in this game. I'm taking the Bearcats. Tom.
Brian, you've taken the Bearcats a lot this season, and you made a bold prediction 2 weeks ago, and it's correct. And I think we lost. I think your team's getting obliterated on Saturday. That Desmond Ridder, Jerome Ford, Alec Pierce. Defensively, you have Deshaun Pace, Ahmad Gardner, and Archon Bush. Cincy will be rocking at home. I do like Ryan O'Keefe, though, for UCF. I think he's a really good wide receiver. So is Brandon Johnson. But I think Cincinnati's going to win this game and more than likely cover the spread.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, keep winning big, Cincinnati, please. It'll really help us out.
There you go. Then moving into the midday slate, we have number 1 Georgia Bulldogs taking on also undefeated Kentucky Wildcats. Tom, we'll start with you on this one. think we know the answer because of the last segment, but who wins this game?
Boy, I was really wrong about Kentucky last week taking LSU, but Will Levis put a 42 piece on LSU last week. 3 passing touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 75 rushing yards. They've got Chris Rodriguez. They've got Kavasi Smoke, who both rushed for over 100 yards.
Yes.
Wan'Dale Robinson has 4 touchdowns. I love J.J. Weaver. This is a defense that held Florida to 13 points, but there's always a but. Georgia is coming off a 24-point win against Auburn at Auburn, who was ranked 18th. Stetson Bennett has done a good job filling in for JT Daniels. Lad McConkey had 5 catches for 135 yards. And the Bulldogs, they'll throw out Zamir White at you. They'll throw out James Cook. Adam Anderson and Akobe Dean lead a defense that has had 22 sacks in their first 6 games of the season. And then you got a really dangerous secondary in Chris Smith, Lewis Sine. This team's already pitched 2 shutouts this year. In my opinion, they're the best defense in the nation. That might even be a fact at this point, not an opinion. So give me Georgia. 23 points, though, seems a little generous in favor of Georgia. I don't know if Kentucky's going to lose by that much, but I'm going to give them a little bit of credit where credit is due. But the Bulldogs are going to win this game.
All right, and I will point out I used that time to find this stat because I think this is honestly it's baffling to me. But this is the first time that 2 SEC East teams with a 6-0 or better record will face off in the history of the SEC. That's an old ass conference. That's for this to be the first time. That's pretty cool. Some will say, well, yeah, the SEC East is really weak, so that's why. But I don't know. I think it'll be an interesting game nonetheless, but I still think Kentucky probably gets spanked. Good for them that they've gotten to number 11. Love to see that win over Florida. I also took LSU last week, gave a little bit of disrespect to the Wildcats. Didn't work out because they whooped LSU. That's probably part of the reason why Andy's given Coach O and LSU a big fat F on his report card earlier.
Also why I picked Kentucky, because I saw it coming.
Yep. So, they've just got too many pieces. And like Tom, like you said, Stetson Bennett has been a nice replacement for JT Daniels. I didn't trust him earlier, but he's done well enough. I think they're still better off with Daniels if he does come back, even just 90% healthy. But I think Georgia should roll here pretty easily. Andy, who's your pick?
So, yeah, Tom mentioned the spread at 23. That seems like a lot of points. Both of these teams are 5-1 against the spread on the year, so that's a line I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Kentucky they've been a great football team this year. They're putting up 31 points a game. They're only allowing 17.5. They haven't allowed more than 28 points in a game through their first 6 this year. But, I mean, Tom said it, and it is a fact, and I'm glad you're on the right side of history now, Tom, that Georgia does have the best defense in the NCAA. What they're going to – and you mentioned Zamir White. What does Georgia want to do with the mailman, Stetson Bennett, under center? They want to pound the rock. They want to shove it in your face, and they want to control the clock. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Zamir White if JT Daniels is still out, which I believe he is. Stetson Bennett's just going to be a game manager, do what he has to, try not to make mistakes, and just keep the offense moving. They're going to pound the rock, and Will Levis, Wan'Dale Robinson, they have an uphill battle on the offensive side of the ball for the Wildcats as well. I mean, I mentioned it earlier how much I love this Georgia defense. Whether it's through the air, only allowing 137 yards, or on the ground, only allowing 64 yards a game. This Bulldog defense is for real, and they are a brick wall, like I said, for like the 5th time on this show, it feels like. But watch out. Dogs roll, move to 7-0. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if they lost. I'd love to see an upset in Athens, but I just don't think it happens.
All right, moving on to the chaser for the slot. We have Virginia Tech versus Pitt. We talked about Pitt a little bit last week in the segment that involved Kenny Pickett, who's doing pretty damn well at QB for Pitt. Tom, you got to see a little bit of Virginia Tech last week against Notre Dame. Took you guys to the wire, but Your kicker had ice in his veins, nailed the kick for the win. We'll start with you on this one since you do have the most recent game tape on them. Who wins this one, Virginia Tech or Pitt?
It was funny. Saturday night, I sent you guys a picture. Brian, you thought I was at Virginia Tech
Yeah.
at that game. Meanwhile, I was at a bar in Connecticut. But yes, the Notre Dame game was on. And look, Pittsburgh, okay. Blacksburg, Virginia is a very tough place to play. But when you got a Heisman candidate in Kenny Pickett, 19 touchdowns, just one pick, he's completed 72% of his passes. You can consider him, I don't want to say a poor man's version of Joe Burrow, but he's kind of been. There are similarities where Pickett has kind of jumped on the scene out of nowhere. Joe Burrow did a very similar thing 2 years ago. Obviously, his team was more well rounded. Pickett is kind of carrying this team by himself, but they have three running backs with at least two touchdowns, so we can't discredit that. And Jordan Addison has 9 touchdown receptions, and a good football team always has a good tight end. Lucas Kroll, 5 touchdowns on the season. So no, it's not just Pickett that carries this team. It's the whole offense that carries this team. And I'm looking at this offense and what they've been able to produce. They've scored over 40 points in every game this season. You want to talk about an ACC team that has a legit shot? Pittsburgh is that team, Brian. It's not Wake Forest. Virginia Tech only lost by 3 to Notre Dame last week. That's very true. But Braxton Burmeister continues to hold this offense back. I don't see Virginia Tech, getting beat by a lot in this game because they have a good defense that can potentially slow down that Pittsburgh offense, because I do like Jermaine Waller with those 4 interceptions, but I think Pittsburgh's going to take it on the road. Kenny Pickett poses way too much matchup problems for this Hokie secondary, guys.
Yeah, you covered a lot of their offensive weapons. Listen, I'm on the Kenny Pickett train. 19 touchdowns, 1 interception, 52 points per game. That is such a weird thing to say about a Pitt team.
500 yards of offense too.
It's crazy. It's pretty crazy. They are favored here on the road, which is also really weird because this isn't a bad Virginia Tech team. Like you said, Blacksburg, hard place to play. But yeah, they're explosive this year. What else can you say about them? It's real unfortunate that they do have that weird loss, I guess. I'll say, to Western Michigan, because if I agree, Tom, if they were undefeated, this is the team that could have brought some glory to the ACC. But that was by no fault of Pickett and the offense themselves. That was a little bit of a defensive unmasterclass there. But I do think they win here. Virginia Tech just had a really tough game against Notre Dame. Pitt had a bye week. I love that. They get the rest. I think Kenny Pickett leads them to victory here. Looking at the spread, 5 points. That's a little rough. I do think it'll be kind of close, but I don't think it's worth risking it here. But I'm still taking Pitt for the pick'em. Andy, who's your pick?
It's got to be Pitt. It was always Pittsburgh, guys. It was always Pittsburgh. You look. We mentioned it. 52 points per game. This might be the best defense they've played so far. If you look at it, the Hokies are only allowing 18 points per their opponents, 18 points per game, and but I just think this offense is just too. Excuse me, is just too explosive. Braxton Burmeister has been, okay. He's their leading rusher as well, with 193 yards and 2 touchdowns on 58 carries. So it shows you that they're kind of lacking at running back there. But they still do average 140 yards on the ground as a team. But I just don't think there's going to be enough for the Hokies in this game. I love Pittsburgh here. You mentioned it, 19 touchdowns to 1 interception. I'm not as big of the ratio guy as Brian, but I assume he was really good at getting into parties in college if he had a good ratio. So,
all right, sweep for Pitt in what is kind of looking like an even game, but everyone loves the Panthers here. Moving on to our late games. This is typically a 7:30 slot, but this is a very, very late game here. Classic Pac-12 action. We have Arizona State, the Sun Devils, taking on Utah. Starts at 10 p.m. It is our shot for the. I call it 7:30, but it's now technically our late night games. Andy, who takes this?
Arizona State takes this game. So Utah, they replaced Charlie Brewer in, like after like 4 games, I think, after he got benched. He is in the transfer portal. They haven't looked right kind of since then. Arizona State's finding their footing, after a good week last week, getting that victory over Stanford. So, I mean, Jalen Davis has been pretty great. God damn, can't talk. Has been pretty great for them this year. He's been a solid leader under center. I just like Herm Edwards' team in this game. I'm taking Arizona State.
Firm for Herm. Tom.
I'm firm for Herm.
I
Tom,
like the Sun Devils too. They've won 3 in a row: Colorado, UCLA, who's still ranked somehow, and then Stanford. So I like Darian Butler too defensively, and I love their running back. Rashad White has 9 touchdowns. I don't think the Utes are going to be able to pull this one off. Now, Cameron Rising has been real solid in his first 3 starts for the Utes. He loves his tight ends, Brant Kuth and Dalton Kincaid. I think those are 2 good players for him, but he doesn't really have a go-to wide receiver. Both teams have one common opponent. They both lost to BYU. The Utes are coming off a win against USC, but they've kind of fallen off over the past couple of years. Give me Arizona State.
going against the grain here. I am taking the Utes. Tom, you gave a little bit of a laugh a few weeks ago when we were talking about Oregon's schedule. I said going to Utah could be a tough game. You gave me a little bit of a snicker. I think this is still a pretty decent Utah team here. Cameron Rising, like you said, now has the starting job here for the Utes. Listen, I'm typically on the firm for Herm train. Love Herm Edwards. But Utah is a Utah through and through. They have a great rush game. They're actually favored here in this game as far as the FPI goes. Even spread here, so no money line action either way. 110, yeah, minus 110 for both teams here. Listen, Arizona State, decent team. Daniels, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Andy, you gonna dog on me from a ratio love? It's not very great.
No.
But yeah, I'm just going against the grain here. This game really could honestly go either way. I don't know who's gonna win this game, but for the sake of pick'em, I need to get a little bit of a gap. So I'm going with the Utes, and then moving into a game that is actually around 7:30. We have a little bit of D2 action here. We have Grand Valley State taking on Ferris State. This is on the slate. It was inspired by a Reddit post by a user called Cleasheen. He did a really nice write-up. He wanted College Game Day to go here for this game because they have never been to a Division II game, despite being around for 30 years. Both teams here undefeated. Grand Valley State ranked number 7. Ferris State ranked number 3. A lot of interesting takes here for this game. We'll spread them out amongst everyone because I'm sure, Tom, a name you might recognize is an alumni, or sorry, not an alumni, ex-coach of one of these teams. So we'll start with you on this one. Who wins?
Well, Brian Kelly coached Grand Valley State from 1991 to 2003. Little fun fact, as I'm sure you both know. Look, this is a huge rivalry game. They play for the Anchor Bone Trophy. These schools are only 1 hour away from each other. You got the 3rd-ranked team against the 7th-ranked team. Both teams are 5-0. Matt Mitchell has a very impressive squad. Grand Valley State averages 48 points per game. I like Cade Peterson a lot. He's a dual threat. Hunter Ryson with 3 touchdowns on the season. But Ferris State also has a really impressive quarterback in Malik Mitchell. I really like what he brings to the table. And that offense alone is averaging 50 points per game and over 550 yards. So, man, this is really tough. But I'm going with Grand Valley State at home. I think that again, I don't know how much of a home crowd advantage they're going to have because of how well versed Ferris State is and how close they are in location. But I'm going to go with Grand Valley State here and the Lakers.
All right, Andy.
So yeah, I'm not gonna like pretend to know a bunch about Division II football because I don't. But from the little that I have read about it, so Grand Valley State, I think their stadium holds like 10,000 people, which like the past like 9 or 10 years they've led Division II in attendance. It's gonna be packed. It's gonna be a big game. Tom mentioned it. Ferris State's only an hour away. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of opposing fans in the stands as well. Both teams come in undefeated. Ferris State's the number 2 team in the country. We have GVSU's number 7. I don't know, man. This game means a lot to both teams. Like I said, this is me basically shooting darts with a blindfold on. I'm gonna take the home team. I'm taking Grand Valley State.
All right. It was hard to find, some info on these teams. It is worth noting, though, as, to us, it seems like a 50-50. Ferris State has won the last 4 meetings, but the last 3 in the regular season have been decided by a combined 10 points. So
the Lakers are due.
They are. Interestingly,
Andy picking all the same teams as me this week.
It's bound to happen sometime, Tom.
Yeah, interestingly, lost. Okay, the mascot, Louis Laker. So these teams in FBS have some of the most boring mascots, some of the most boring names for the rivalry. We have the Anchorbone Classic, is what we're watching here, boys. And you have a mascot called Louis Laker. Don't know if you can see the, I'm sure you guys saw it looking up the stats for this game, but I have the mascot, the logo on the screen for Shots and Chasers. What a great fucking logo. Like, we get these boring letters for all these teams. Northwestern, here's an N. Nebraska, here's an N. Look at this dude. What an absolute unit Louis Laker is. Ferris State's mascot isn't too bad himself. But yeah, listen, since 1999, no team has won this matchup and then lost the next one. They go on streaks. Okay, Ferris State is on a streak, but I think that changes here. I think Grand Valley State does get the win at home. They have QB Cade Peterson, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and also a solid running back, and Tariq Reed. He has 4 touchdowns on just 13 carries a few weeks ago against Michigan Tech, filling in for Cade Peterson, who had an off week that week. And from that Reddit post of Clichin, he gave us some notable names for this game. Grand Valley State wide receiver Hunter Rison, who is the son of NFL wide receiver Andre Rison, transferred there from Michigan State. Then we had a few more. I think who was it? Patriots players. So someone fill me in. I forgot.
Judon.
Okay, that's how you say it.
Matt Judon went to Grand Valley State.
Yes. He's been doing pretty well. He was obviously having a great game against the Bucks. For anyone that caught that Tom Brady reunion game. But yes, Judon came out of there. They currently have Hunter Rison. But probably the most interesting stat of this entire thing is that Ferris State's QB is a lacrosse player. Played 2-sport player. He was a dual threat QB in high school, but didn't play because he was such a good lacrosse player. He went to Maryland, who is historically a very good lacrosse school. He was a finalist for the T. Wharton Award, which is basically their Heisman. There's just so much to say about this, but I know we have to wrap it up here. Tom has to go. Ferris State averaging 50 points a game, but I still think that Grand Valley State and Louis Laker take this game. I think it'll be a shootout. So if you can find this one, if you live in Michigan, or if you can pirate this game, it'll be on GVSN and WGVU. So if you get that Grand Valley
locked in,
yeah, if you get that Grand Valley television station, you got that satellite dish.
Quickly, I've got one more stat. Ferris State is currently on a 33-game winning streak, 33 consecutive regular season games, and 18 consecutive road games. This will be an uphill battle for us, boys, but we're locked in to the Lakers.
We're locked in. Louis Laker, a sweep. That'll wrap up the show. That was our Shots and Chasers. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the weekend. Subscribe, like everyone's links down below in the description. Andy's, Tom's, buy Tom's merch down in the description. Enjoy the game. See everyone next week.